Hey guys, welcome to lesson 1 in Intro to R for Baseball Coaches. My name is Josh Rodricks, and I guess I'll be a teacher for the next week. I'm really excited to help you guys out. And my goal is that I want to give you guys the base level knowledge, so you don't need to scour the internet, look for a bunch of different things. I want you to leave this course and be able to just dive into analyzing some baseball data without really wasting a lot of time. I want to kind of give you guys a little bit of a head start is my goal. We're going to be covering 3 things in this first lesson. One, we're going to be looking at what are we seeing on our screen right now on R. 2 is going to be bringing in some data. And then 3 is going to be making our first plots. All right, great. So once you have R installed on your computer, we're going to make our first plot. We're going to actually just look at R first. So we're going to see on this left-hand side, we have something called the console and the terminal. You can kind of click on those two if you want to explore a little bit. This is going to be telling us what happens with our code. Is the code working? You're going to see a lot of red as you work through this course, and that's perfectly fine. Red you'll get used to that's just feedback to let us know something's wrong with our code. This bottom right-hand portion is going to be where our plots show up. It's also going to be where our packages and other things show up, and we'll get into that more as we get into the course. And this third area is called the environment, and that's going to be where our data frames show up or our Excel documents are brought into. So the very first thing we're going to look at is making a new script. So you're going to see there's a little plus button in the top left-hand corner, and we're going to go right to where it says R script. So we're going to just jump right into it. And you're going to see that we have a little workspace here, and this is going to be where we're going to be able to type into. It's going to be probably where most of our work is done in this class or when you're coding in R. The very first thing that we need to know about R is that right now it has no skills. It is not powerful at all, your versions of R. So we're going to need to install some skills onto it. And these skills are essentially called just packages. That's the analogy. I'm going to make skills our packages. So in this little workspace, we're going to just type in our first piece of code. So we're going to install .packages. And you'll see that as we write in R, you're going to see that these little pop-ups will happen to you all the time, even these things right here. And in parentheses, in some quotes, we're going to just type in tidyverse. Okay, so we're going to go install.packages, parentheses, tidyverse, and you're essentially going to run your first piece of code. You can click on run. And we just need to teach R how to do things. It's analogous to Neo in the Matrix getting some skills downloaded into his brain. I'll pull up that video for you guys now while this is running for me. So this is analogous to what's going on right now in R. We're essentially just downloading some skills. We're just downloading some skills into R. If you've seen Matrix, just think of your computer right now as Neo. You are going to occasionally have to install new packages, so it's just a nice the first thing that we should learn is just how we do it. So we just put tidyverse onto the computer. It's going to have about 80% of the skills that we need to do anything inside of R. All right, great. And so we can just delete that now once it's been installed. You'll know it's been installed when it says package tidyverse successfully unpacked and MD5 sums checked. I'm not sure what all that means, but I just take that as package has successfully been downloaded. The next thing we need to do is we're going to be bringing in the data that we've downloaded from the classroom. So I put an Excel document inside the classroom. If you just download that, it's going to go onto your computer, and it's going to be the 2020 StatCast data for the past probably 3 weeks in the baseball season. We're going to start our analysis with that data, but eventually you're going to be asked to go out and find your own data and use that to manipulate it. But I think for the first little bit, having the same data is going to be very helpful to me to check your understanding of what we're learning. But once you've downloaded the data, we're going to go to where it says import dataset. And just think of a dataset as analogous, again, and to make an analogy, it's just an Excel document inside of R. So we're going to click on where it says import dataset, and then we're going to go from text base. So we can just click on that. And you're going to go in and find the information that you have. And we're going to just click on Savant 2020. And the first thing you're going to see is that it's going to have a whole bunch of information. It's very overwhelming. Really, the only place that we need to focus on is going to be down in this corner to get started. And you're going to notice it can say V1, V2, V3, V4, etc. And we don't really want these V1, V2s. We want these to be the headers. So pitch type, game date, release speed. So we're just going to click on where it says headings, and we're going to click yes. And then you're going to see that those V's are gone, and we're now going to get those nice headers. So once that's all set, we click import, and you're going to see it's going to take a second to bring it in, but once it's in, this is going to pop up here, and this is going to be our first data frame. So once you have this data frame inside here, the first thing we should do is you need to go through and scroll to see what the different column names are. This is just going to be a good thing to do just to see what you have, throws, away team, etc. If you need to go to the next one, there's 92 columns. You can click right on that. And then again, it's going to give you more information. You're going to see that if this doesn't pop up for you, you can click right where it says Savant 2020, and you're going to see a couple of numbers off to the side I'll talk about in a second, but if you click on that, the data frame is going to pop back up so you can easily look at it again. And you will occasionally need to do that, but just know that right now in the StatCast data for the last 2 weeks, we have 2,600 rows and we have 91 columns, okay? So once we know what we have in terms of data, we can now go into the workspace, and we need to do a couple things before we make our first plots today. So the first thing we have to do is we have to call a skill. So we can't just say hey, use Kung Fu. We have to say load Kung Fu in our brain, and then from there we can use it. So we're going to load, not Kung Fu obviously, but we're going to load something called ggplot2. So we're going to type that in. So we're going to go library, ggplot2, and then we're going to click run. And we're going to know that ggplot has been run when we see it down here. And nothing's going to happen. It's just we're going to load that first skill today. So once we've loaded the skill, we can then go in and start to manipulate the data and make our first plot. So now that we're ready for our first plot, we're going to just start to go into it, and I'll explain what we're going to be putting. But the very first thing we're going to put is right below. It doesn't really matter. I like to keep spaces, but it's your preference. We're going to type in ggplot, and then if you want to, you click on the very front. And what we're essentially telling the computer right now is we want to plot, and we're going to just type in Savant 2020. So we're going to say plot this data, and then we're going to put a comma. And then we need to actually tell our what we want on the X and the Y axis. So we're going to say visualize aesthetic, what we want to show, X equal, and now this is going to be the X axis. So we're going to go Savant 2020. And so right now we're saying we want to plot Savant 2020, and on the X axis, we have a whole bunch of different columns we can choose from, okay, right on the top here. And we could click on this every single time, but there's actually a shortcut you can use. So instead of clicking and looking through all 91 columns, you can just put the money sign. And when you put the money sign, you're going to get all the columns start to pop up right on the top, right on this little thing. I'm actually going to look for launch speed, and then I'm going to put a comma because then I want to put the y-axis. Then y is equal to, and again, I'm not sure what the column titles are called yet, Savant 2020, and I want to see all of the column names again. I'm going to go launch angle. And then the biggest thing with R is you need to make sure that these parentheses all close each other. So you're going to see right here, when I get on the right side of the parentheses, it's going to say that I closed it with this one. When I click on the other one, it's going to tell me I closed it on that one. So once you have something like this typed in, you can click run, and then you're going to get really excited because you're going to see your first plot start to come up. So I'm going to move my screen over here. And you're going to see that we have our y-axis is going to say launch angle, and our x-axis, you can't really see it, but it's going to say launch speed. So we now are you're going to be a little confused. Josh, where are my points? I'm confused by this. We haven't really told ggplot or R what we want to show up. So we have just said, hey, put this on the y-axis, put this on the x-axis, and that's it. We will now want to add points to it. So we want to hit the plus button. So we want to add and we want to say geom point. So before I run this one, I want to read this whole thing because you should be able to read code. So we want to say plot our data, and we want to visualize on the x-axis launch speed, and on the y-axis we want launch angle, and we want them to be basically points or scatter plot. So now when I click run, it's going to take all the data for the last 2 weeks, and it's going to pop up y-axis is going to be launch angle, x-axis is going to be launch speed, and it's going to pull in all the batted balls for the past 2 weeks in Major League Baseball, and we can start to look at them. So what I'm going to ask you to do for our first assignment here is we're going to make this plot, and then I would explore from there. So I'm going to actually ask you guys to make this plot. It's a very easy first start, and then we're going to just go to where it says export, and we're going to save the image, and I'm going to make an assignment just called first plot inside of Google Classroom, and I'm just going to ask that you guys just upload the image of this plot right here, just so I know that everybody's on the same page and that we have a common understanding of this. Once you've made this first plot, you are set for this first assignment. And what I would tell you to do is, like, you now know how to make a scatter plot. I would explore a little bit and change this. Maybe it's not, maybe it's not launch speed. Maybe it's going to be plate X. I don't know. And I know the data pretty well. And I'm going to put plate Z. So I'm going to get the coordinates across the plate and up the plate. So from the catcher's perspective, and I'm going to see where all the pitches have been for the last 2 weeks. I'm going to encourage you guys to explore a little bit in terms of this setup right here, and then we're going to get all the pitches in the major leagues for the last 2 weeks. So I'm going to just ask you guys to explore, but please just share the one that is launch speed, launch angle, and then from there, I would spend 5 minutes exploring how to make a scatter plot before we get into our next lesson as we go forward.